Golden words Imam Ali A.'s Part I.
Praise is due to Allah, whose worth cannot be described by speakers, whose bounties cannot be counted by calculators, and whose claim to obedience cannot be satisfied by those who attempt to do so, whom the height of intellectual courage cannot appreciate, and the divings of understanding cannot reach. He for whose description no limit has been laid down, no eulogy exists, no time is ordained, and no duration is fixed.
He brought forth creation through his omnipotence, dispersed winds through his compassion, and made firm the shaking earth with rocks.
The foremost in religion is the acknowledgement of him. The perfection of acknowledging him is to testify him. The perfection of testifying him is to believe in his oneness. The perfection of believing in his oneness is to regard him pure, and the perfection of his purity is to deny him attributes, because every attribute is a proof that it is different from that to which it is attributed, and everything to which something is attributed is different from the attribute.
Thus, whoever attaches attributes to Allah recognizes his like, and whoever recognizes his like regards him too, and whoever regards him as two recognizes parts for him, and whoever recognizes parts for him mistook him, and whoever mistook him pointed at him,
and whoever pointed at him admitted limitations for him,
and whoever admitted limitations for him numbered him.
Whoever said, "In what is he?"
held that he is contained, and whoever said, "On what is he?" held he is not on something else. He is a being, but not through phenomenon of coming into being.
He exists, but not from non-existence. He is with everything, but not in physical nearness. He is different from everything, but not in physical separation.
He acts but without connotation of movements and instruments. He sees even when there is none to be looked at from among his creation.
He is only one, such that there is none with whom he may keep company or whom he may miss in his absence. He initiated creation most initially and commenced it originally, without undergoing reflection, without making use of any experiment, without innovating any movement, and without experiencing any aspiration of mind. He allotted all things their times, put together their variations, gave them their properties, and determined their features, knowing them before creating them, realizing fully their limits and confines, and appreciating their propensities and intricacies.
When Almighty created the openings of atmosphere, expanse of firmament, and strata of winds, he flowed into it water, whose waves were stormy, and whose surges leapt one over the other.
He loaded it on dashing wind and breaking typhoons, ordered them to shed it back as rain, gave the wind control over the figure of the rain, and acquainted it with its limitations.
The wind blew under it, while water flowed furiously over it. Then Almighty created forth wind, and made its movement sterile, perpetuated its position, intensified its motion, and spread it far and wide. Then he ordered the wind to raise up deep waters, and to intensify the waves of the oceans. So the wind churned it like the churning of curd, and pushed it fiercely into the firmament, throwing its front position on the rear, and the stationary on the flowing, till its level was raised, and the surface was full of foam. Then Almighty raised the foam onto the open wind and vast firmament, and made there from the seven skies, and made the lower one as a stationary surge, and the upper one as protective ceiling, and a high edifice, without any pole to support it or nail to hold it
together.
Then he decorated them with stars and the light of meteors, and hung in it the shining sun and effulgent moon under the revolving sky, moving ceiling and rotating firmament. Then he created the openings between high skies, and filled them with all classes of his angels.
Some of them are in prostration, and do not kneel up.
Others in kneeling position, and do not stand up.
Some of them are in array, and do not leave their position. Others are extolling Allah, and do not get tired. The sleep of the eye, or the slip of wit, or languor of the body, or the effect of forgetfulness, does not affect them.
Among them are those who work as trusted bearers of his message, those who serve as speaking tongues for his prophets, and those who carry to and fro his orders and injunctions. Among them are the protectors of his creatures, and guards of the doors of the gardens of paradise. Among them are those also whose steps are fixed on earth, but their necks are protruding into the skies. Their limbs are getting out on all sides. Their shoulders are in accord with the columns of the divine throne. Their eyes are downcast before it.
They have spread down their wings under it, and teach.
Allah collected from hard, soft, sweet, and sour earth, clay which he draped in water till it got pure, and kneaded it with moisture till it became glue.
From it he carved an image with curves, joints, limbs, and segments. He solidified it till it dried up for a fixed time and a known duration.
Then he blew into it out of his spirit, whereupon it took the pattern of a human being with mind that governs him, intelligence which he makes use of, limbs that serve him, organs that change his position, sagacity that differentiates between truth and untruth, tastes and smells,
colors and species.
He is a mixture of clays of different colors, cohesive materials, divergent contradictories and differing properties like heat, cold, softness and hardness, grief and joy. Then Allah asked the angels to fulfill his promise with them and to accomplish the pledge of his injunction to them by acknowledging him through prostration to him and submission to his honored position. So Allah said, self-importance withheld him and vice overcame him, so that he took pride in his own creation with fire and treated contemptuously the creation of clay. So Allah allowed him time in order to let him fully deserve his wrath, and to complete man's test, and to fulfill the promise he had made to Satan. Thus, he said, self-importance withheld him and vice overcame him, so that he took pride in his own creation with fire and treated contemptuously the creation of clay. So Allah allowed him time in order to let him fully deserve his wrath, and to complete man's test, and to fulfill the promise he had made to Satan. Thus, he said, from his Adam's progeny Allah chose prophets and took their pledge for his revelation and for carrying his message as their trust. In course of time, many people perverted Allah's trust with them and ignored his position and took compeers along with him. Satan turned them away from knowing him and kept them aloof from his worship. Then Allah sent his messengers and series of his prophets towards them to get them to fulfill the pledges of his creation, to record to them his bounties, to exhort them by preaching, to unveil before them the hidden virtues of wisdom and show them the signs of his omnipotence, namely the sky which is raised over them, the earth that is placed beneath them, means of living that sustain them, deaths that make them die,
ailments that turn them old, and incidents that successively betake them.
Allah never allowed his creation to remain without a prophet deputized by him, or a book sent down from him, or a binding argument, or a standing plea.
These messengers were such that they did not feel little because of smallness of their number or of largeness of the number of their falsifiers.
Among them was either a predecessor who would name the one to follow, or the follower who had been introduced by the predecessor.
In this way ages passed by and times rolled on. Fathers passed away while sons took their places, till Allah deputized Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his progeny as his prophet, in fulfillment of his promise and in completion of his prophethood.
His pledge had been taken from the prophets. His traits of character were well reputed, and his birth was honorable. The people of the earth at this time were divided in different parties. Their aims were separate and ways were diverse. They either likened Allah with his creation, or twisted his names, or turned to else than him. Through Muhammad Allah guided them out of wrong, and with his efforts took them out of ignorance.
Then Allah chose for Muhammad, peace be upon him, and on his progeny, to meet him, selected him for his own nearness, regarded him too dignified to remain in this world, and decided to remove him from this place of trial. So he drew him towards himself with honor. Allah may shower his blessing on him and his progeny. But the prophet left among you the same which other prophets left among their peoples, because prophets do not leave them untended in dark without a clear path and a standing ensign, namely the book of your Creator clarifying its permission and prohibitions, its obligations and discretion, its repealing injunctions and the repealed ones, its permissible matters and compulsory ones, its particulars and the general ones, its lessons and illustrations, its long and the short ones, its clear and obscure ones, detailing its abbreviations and clarifying its obscurities. But the prophet left among you the same which other prophets left among their peoples, because prophets do not leave them untended in dark without a clear path and a standing ensign, namely the book of your Creator clarifying its permission and prohibitions, its obligations and discretion, its repealing injunctions and the repealed ones, its permissible matters and compulsory ones, its particulars and the general ones, its lessons and illustrations, its long and the short ones, its clear and obscure ones, detailing its abbreviations and clarifying its obscurities.